Welcome to the Christianity in Business podcast with host Darren Shear, an initiative of the Archie W. Dunham College of Business at Houston Baptist University. This is the show that helps Christian business leaders to integrate biblical values into business. You can get more information about HBU's Center for Christianity in Business and sign up to receive free access to all issues of the Christian Business Review Journal by visiting our website at christianityinbusiness.com.
On this episode, we're joined by Jeff Thomas. Jeff has over 25 years of experience working at some of the biggest names on Wall Street. He was named to Morgan Stanley's Chairman's Club. That's the top 2% of advisors in 2008. Interesting season and time for the financial industry. From 2009 to 2013, Barron's Magazine recognized him as one of Texas's top financial advisors. And I know other financial advisors, and they want to be on that list. So this is certainly some prestigious titles Jeff has achieved. In 2017, Jeff established Archetype Wealth Partners, LLC, from small advisors who are wired for more to high-capacity business owners. He's passionate about fueling leaders for greater impact. And you're going to definitely get a good sense of that as you listen to Jeff share his heart for financial advisors and just bringing the light of God's truth and God's ways into the financial industry. And he's the author of the new book, Trading Up, Moving from Success to Significance on Wall Street. Jeff, thanks for joining us.
Hey, Darren, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Jeff, at what point in your professional journey did you realize God wanted to be central to your work in this industry?
Well, it was probably about 15 years ago. I had grown up. My dad was a business guy, an engineer, MBA, who was just working for International Harvester and in Indiana, and going to church with my mom. And in his late 20s. The pastor asked him if he'd ever thought about going into ministry. And to I think my mother's surprise, he said yes. And that set him on a path to go back to seminary and end up becoming a pastor. And so I grew up with kind of the notion that if you're all in for God, the way my dad was, that you had to work for the church or a nonprofit or be a missionary or something like that. And so I kind of had that wrong for the first 15 years or so of my career. I really didn't feel called, as it were, to be a pastor in a church. But so I kind of thought the rest of us in business, I really enjoyed business. And so, for the first 15 years of my career, I really just focused on building a business. And I thought the rest of us are good people as believers. We sort of support those that are actually doing the heavy lifting of ministry. And so I didn't really get the notion that we're all in ministry. And of course, that led to a little bit of an empty place. So when I was about 36 years old, that's about 15 years ago, I just got to a place where I was in the financial advisory business and built a big practice, and but made all this money that I thought would make me happy, and it just sort of led to an empty place. And I was just asking God, well, I've done everything. I've sort of lived the American dream. You're supposed to be happy, right? Money's supposed to solve your problems. And of course it doesn't. And so I just had a kind of a turn at that point. I decided, I was kind of embarrassed about my lack of biblical knowledge. Here my dad ended up with a doctorate in this stuff. And I felt like I had kind of a second grader's knowledge of the Bible. So I started doing a lot of Bible study. I was just doing it through Bible Study Fellowship. Maybe some of your listeners are acquainted with that, or you are. And so I got into God's Word in a way that I had never had before. And it just got revealed to me that, even though I had confessed that Christ was the Lord of my life since I was 13 years old, and I could do that for myself, I really was putting money before God. And of course, in God's Word, it says you can only serve one master, God or mammon. And I wouldn't have told you before I started doing that study that that's what I was doing, but I think God really revealed that to me. And I just really tried to repent of that and change my life. But that was not so easy to do at first.
Yeah. I mean, you were in the top 2% of advisors and Morgan Stanley, one of the largest, if not the largest. Um, so you observed a lot of, well, you were experiencing, as you've described it to me, a misalignment. And you were seeing some things happening that really you were wanting to go in a direction of living out your faith in your workplace, uh, but you didn't really have the freedom, and so you were experiencing this misalignment. What aspects of how you're serving clients at Archetype, the firm that you started in 2017, just weren't happening in other Wall Street firms that you were a part of?
Yeah. So one of the statistics that we quote a lot at Archetype is that most families, and your listeners have probably heard this expression, shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations.
Hmm.
And, frankly, for me, the money piece, the passing of the money is less important than the values, for example. And so they've done these analyses of why these families sort of fail in 3 generations. The third generation can't really, certainly the money's gone 90% of the time, but really also with that come the values. And they did an analysis of why, and that what they came to was it wasn't because of the planning, it wasn't because of a poor estate plan or the wills were written wrong in these families, or that the investments had done poorly. It was really a lack of communication in these families. And so, sort of when I made the turn that I described of really trying to put God first and money second in my own life, God really just woke me up to try to help other families do the same thing and to try to teach these values to the next generations. Frankly, the planning and the investments is the easy part. We like to be excellent at that. And a lot of people come to us for those things, for estate planning, financial planning, investments. We want to be excellent at that. But we know that the real value of what we do is in having a conversation about these values that these families hold dear, especially if they're believers, that their belief in Christ and their spiritual capital could be passed down. And they're not having those conversations. There aren't many people that are facilitating those conversations, first between husband and wife, to get on the same page.
Hmm.
And then certainly not to the kids or grandkids. So, the kids and grandkids get to see them live it out and these type of things. But sometimes you need a forum, especially at the larger net worth folks. If you're passing money without wisdom, that's a formula for trouble. And that's what most families run into. So we really wanted, so our team was trying at Morgan Stanley to put on events and create space for having these conversations about passing not just your money, but your values. And that's really kind of countercultural. Wall Street was, and I'm not mad at Morgan Stanley for it. It's just not the way the firm was built. These firms were built back in the mid 1800s when they were building railroads in the United States. And we sort of imported investment bankers from Europe to come over and create stocks and bonds to raise money to build the railroads. Well, so it was always kind of a product sale, and we're still trying to get away from that in the wealth management business, where we're not just selling a product or a stock or a bond or a mutual fund or some kind of product, but we're really the value now is shifting to these family conversations. And so those firms aren't quite as comfortable with that. And they're certainly not terribly comfortable with coming from a Christian perspective, because they're big public. In the case of Morgan Stanley, it's a big public New York-based firm with all of the sort of secular values that come from that. So they're a little uncomfortable with being overt about using biblical wisdom. So,
what type of resistance?
Yeah.
What's an example of a type of resistance?
Yeah. Well, so what? I could go forever about this topic. You getting me worked up, but for instance, in 2007 at Morgan Stanley, I started something called the Christian Focus Group, which was to help financial advisors, really of any faith, understand the Christian marketplace. And really, the crux of that was Christians think of course, as stewards, not of owners, as owners, right? God owns it all, and we're just stewards of what He's created. And so that's a very different mindset from other people with other worldviews who feel like the pressure's all on them and it's their stuff. So, of course, as Christians, we think that God owns it all. He's in charge, and we're just to look to Him for guidance and do what He says and glorify Him by blessing others. And so there's a lot of generosity and these sort of things. So our team at Morgan Stanley, we actually had a brochure that had Morgan Stanley on it, our team name on it, and we had Bible verses in it. And so there's a print media group in New York that would approve such brochures, and there was a sweet lady there that approved this brochure for our team, and I got it. And again, I had started this Christian focus group. We had about 600 members, and almost every day one of them would call me and ask them how they could build a God-honoring practice at that firm, and I'd talk to them about it, and I'd send them. In fact, I sent all of the members, 600 members, this brochure we had with Bible verses in it. and I said, hey, they approved it for us. They ought to approve something similar, maybe edit it, write your own, whatever you want to do. But God bless you. I hope you get a similar brochure approved. And so anyway, print media in New York at Morgan Stanley got inundated with requests for this new brochure. And the lady, the head of the department, called me and said, Jeff, what have you done? I said, What do you mean? You approved this brochure? I just sent it to all the other Christian focus group folks. And she said, well, I did you a favor. I didn't mean for you to send it to everybody. And I said, well, I wish you would have told me that before I hit send on that email. Anyway, the lawyers got involved, of course, and they banned all Bible verses from print media. So just things like that. And again, I didn't get too worked up. One of the wonderful things about our country is that we are free to practice our own religion. And we just, when I look at lots of other countries, China, other places that are so restrictive, I feel so blessed. So rather than spend time worrying about what one company won't let me do because of their culture, God had already brought us just so generously, so many families to serve, that we really had the resources to start our own firm, thanks to what God had delivered to us. And so that's what we decided to do. And so we started from scratch with a God-honoring culture. In fact, our vision statement at Archetype is to build the ideal God-honoring wealth management company. And then our mission is to help families thrive across generations by connecting their money with their purpose.
Yeah. But before you move into Archetype, I want to hear a little bit more about this. Was that the flashpoint moment when you realized it was time to start your own firm, or what? How much longer did you stay at the company? When you're now responsible for a company policy being made that no Bible verses are going to go on any of our content. I mean, like, how much longer was it? Was that the straw that broke the camel's back, or were there other things that happened? Yeah,
it was probably death by 1,000 paper cuts, to be honest with you. There were all kinds of little battles, and my attitude with the leadership of that Christian focus group was we really never got upset. We just kept asking for things that we thought would help us serve families the way we felt called to serve them. And every morning, I was telling you earlier, every morning I actually spent in the office of our branch manager, who kind of represents the firm, and I'd be saying, "Hey, we kind of need this to execute the way we need to, and this to execute." And I always felt like we got about half of what we wanted to get done. And so I never really knew any different. I'd spent 25 years in that environment, but God had given us a vision actually for scale. And so when I was sitting with one of my mentors in 2010, Ron Blue, he had started a wealth management firm, and he made a comment to me one day. He said, Jeff, everything I start gets bigger and better after I leave. I can't believe this wealth management firm's 15 offices, $50 million in revenue now after 30 years. And it was just like I had this total moment of clarity about what I was supposed to do with my life. I felt like God saying, I want you to scale what this guy started. And scale was the word. And so, Darren, everything we did, kind of throwing ourselves into the Christian focus group, we try to almost create a firm within the firm. So we were partnering with about 50 different financial advisors within Morgan Stanley, kind of a subset of that Christian focus group. And so structurally, those big companies are not made for a smaller company to kind of be created within it. So we just tried to go as far as we had. We had a lot of favor there because, I was on a lot of committees at the firm and that sort of thing, and they'd treat us well overall. So I really wanted to try to do it within the walls and maybe change Wall Street from changing a culture of one of the largest players. But finally, we just got as far as we could. The structure, where partnering with people around the country was difficult with the existing platform, the banning of Bible verses. We weren't able to communicate. I had written this book, a lot of this book 4 years ago. It was very difficult to get a book published that had a lot of Bible verses in it, that sort of thing. And so all of those things sort of added up to, it was clear that God had given us this vision, and there were enough sort of X's by the things we needed to do that I just felt like I was just praying about it, sort of mourning the death of that vision for scaling something that honored him at Morgan Stanley. And I just felt like him saying, it's time to leave. And so it was just accumulation. There wasn't one event, but it was kind of the stacking up of all of these obstacles in the way of this vision we had. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you had come in contact with Kingdom Advisor when you were talking about this principle of stewardship and financial management and this principle of God owns it all. I know Ron Blue, Kingdom Advisors have really kind of been at least in my mind, the kind of the pioneers of that concept in modern day. And I know Larry Burkett as well. How much of an influence and at what point did you kind of start to get this in you, that God owns it all?
Yeah, I think this was a very personal journey for me, where when I really started as a financial advisor in 1995, and about 10 years into that, I'd built a pretty big team in practice, and I really expected that to deliver joy that it didn't deliver by itself. And that's that period I was sort of talking about feeling empty and starting to do the Bible study. So it was really around 2005, and about a couple of years of Bible study into that. So 2006 and 2007, I really felt like God saying, listen, I own everything. I don't own just the little areas that you've given me lordship over. I actually own everything. And so it would go much better for you, I felt like him telling me, if you'd give me all areas of your life, including the money. And so I did that really with my wife in 2006. And that's sort of when that turn started happening. And then after we changed our budget and really put the giving kind of from the bottom line item to the top line item, sort of the first fruits, of course, like within 10 days, I find out about Kingdom Advisors. And I felt like the analogy I always give is that God told me to build a sailboat. So I was in my garage with fuzzy plans from the internet, building kind of a not a very pretty sunfish imitator. And then Kingdom Advisors came along with the America's Cup racer boat and tossed me a sweater and asked me if I'd like to go a lot faster on their boat. And so that's when I found Ron and all of these other wonderful people that had done a lot of work in this area about how to advise clients in a biblical manner. And I thought, they put me 40 years ahead. I mean, I thought I was going to have to write all this material in my lifetime. And really, I stand on the shoulders of Ron Blue, and he always says he stands on the shoulders of Larry Burkett, and then Howard Dayton, who started Compass Ministries. He was at Crown and then Compass, and of course they do a lot of biblical material around money for churches. And then Ron Blue's mission field is really to advisors. And so those two guys really say they stand on the shoulders of Larry Burkett. And then the rest of us out here now, there's kind of a new generation. They're trying to build firms and do all kind of things that are standing on their shoulders.
Yeah. And one of the things that's really unique about your firm that I've noticed is that it's not just about managing money. It's actually about discipling wealth advisors and help, because based on your experience, that there's so many other extremely gifted advisors out there that are experiencing the same misalignment that you had. And so how do you disciple these wealth advisors? What's some of the baggage that they kind of come to you with?
Yeah, it's a great question, and one of the questions we ask the families we work with a lot when we're trying to get to their passions. We don't just ask people, what are your values? We really just get their story,
Mhm.
and then we tease those values out of their narrative. And so one of the questions we always ask is, what breaks your heart? When we're trying to get to their passions or their values, what breaks your heart? And for some people, it might be stopping sex trafficking. Some people, it might be hunger. Some people, it might be abuse of children, whatever it is. For me, it's these families who just they just need a little bit of coaching to figure out what their lane is to serve God with everything they've got. The other thing that breaks my heart is financial advisors. I have this, God really planted a heart in me for other advisors. When I had that turn personally about kind of going from the way Wall Street teaches that the one with the most toys wins versus the one who's most generous wins, and the one who stewards what God's given them the best wins, as opposed to stacking it up for yourself the way the culture says. That gave me so much joy to get on God's agenda. I thought it'd be more fun to stack up your toys.
Mhm.
And I stacked up as many as I could, and it didn't give me any joy. And then when I started doing it God's way, oh my gosh, the joy has been exponential. And so I just wanted that for everybody else, clients, advisors. And so for me, my life is really mostly about training other advisors to think about that themselves, and then to turn around and help clients think that way. So, one of the really hard things in our industry is 9 out of 10 new advisors fail out of the business within 3 years. And the reason for that is that, in my opinion, they're not given good enough training in the very early days. There's still very much a salesy culture at the big firms where they have a salary, but it kind of starts going away after about 6 months and ticks down pretty quickly. And if you don't there's a lot of pressure to bring in revenue very quickly, or else you're gone. And so I just think a 90% fail rate of new people coming into any industry, that's just not a good thing. So we have a theory at Archetype. We'd like to reverse that. We'd love to have 9 out of 10 make it in the industry, because these are beautiful people who really want to serve people in an excellent way, but we just don't think they're given the proper training. And so we're hiring some newer advisors, but we're very careful about who we hire. We're going very slowly so that we can invest the time and resources into these folks to really train them. We think being part of a team is critical. So we think, bringing a 30-year-old in right off the street and immediately having them manage the entire net worth of a 60-year-old with significant assets is not a smart thing. So we really like to disciple them. We don't like them going on any meetings by themselves, kind of 2 by 2 out there. They can sort of tell the story, but when it comes to the advice, we really want more experienced people delivering the advice. And so anyway, we just really want to walk alongside them in a more meaningful way than the industry's done. So probably means we have to do it slower, but hopefully our success rate is higher, and as we grow, hopefully we can hire more of them.
One of the things I see you doing are these workshops for like high school age, kind of early college age folks, to teach them some of the principles of finance. How does that fit into your business model?
So how we're kind of different in the marketplace from a client perspective is we deal with a lot of business owners in transition. And so they end up, usually a lot of times, these are family businesses that have been started 1 to 4 generations back. And, they're used to kind of paying themselves, just a kind of a living wage, pretty good wage, but maybe they're making $200,000 or $300,000 and they're tithing off of that, and so maybe they're given $20,000 or $30,000 a year. But somehow God will lead them to selling the company, and they might have $10 million or $20 million or $50 million suddenly liquid, and so instead of maybe they inherited the business from their parents or whatever it is, and they sort of inherited a job, if you will, and some ownership in a company. having that liquidity is a bigger deal. So that's a new thing for them to think about. How do I pass liquidity down to my children? And the number one fear that is voiced from our clients is, how do I not ruin my children with this money? And I wish somebody would come alongside of us and help educate the next generation about money. And so we started doing this this year. We did one in the summer. Kind of the 18 to 25-year-olds are sort of our target for this. And maybe we'll slice that a little more carefully. Maybe we'll just do high school. Maybe we'll just do college. Maybe we'll do just in their 20s later. But for now, we're just kind of doing the 18 to 25-year-olds. We did one in the summer. We did one at the winter break. So if they're in college or in high school, at the end of high school, they can kind of attend these more easily on breaks. But it's about a 3-hour session. We just do it at a local coffee shop in Houston. And we go through all kinds of things. I'm the old guy. I'm actually banned from the meeting. So we have our younger advisors delivering this wisdom to their peer group, really, and slightly younger. So we want these, we call them the next gen of these wealthy families we have, to feel comfortable to ask any question and kind of have their own advisors. Because we think that's another thing that's important, to have a multi-generational team that speaks the language of each generation.
Yeah. And it goes back to what you were saying earlier about how there's such a lack of communication among the family members about the financial matters and so many other issues of life. And that many of the big firms, they just don't really have a focus, or they're just so focused on the money management aspect. They're not really thinking about the relationships and all these other dynamics that are in play. So I appreciate that type of initiative to equip the next generation with these principles of what the Bible says about money and just wisdom as it relates to money. Jeff, how would you respond to the skepticism somebody might have that, well, Jeff, maybe you should have stayed there at Morgan Stanley because you could be the salt and light in that company. And, when you leave, now who's going to be kind of discipling that company from the inside out? And, by going off and doing your own thing, maybe you're not able to have as much of an impact on the culture of the industry. How would you respond to somebody that has that thought process?
That's fair. It's a fair question, and I think one of the things God's been working on me about lately is that He's God and I'm not. And that sounds kind of obvious and simple, but what I mean by that is my calling is different from your calling, and which is different from there's a guy in Indianapolis with Morgan Stanley that helped me a lot. His name is Brad with the Christian Focus Group, and Brad's closer to retirement, and God didn't give him the vision to build a brand new firm that would scale in the United States to honor him. That's kind of a crazy, huge vision that God gave me, and I'm just crazy enough to do it. And I'm going to have to do it completely with His help. So there are plenty of other people, of those other, let's say, 599 members of the Christian Focus Group at Morgan Stanley. Maybe God will peel a few off to come here and to go other places, but I'm sure many of them will stay at Morgan Stanley. And when they pray about, God, where do you want me? And I hope they're doing that. He'll tell them, I want you right where you are, and keep fighting the battles for me. And so I think, it's not just up to me. Each of us just has our own. We talk a lot about stewardship, right? We've used that word a few times in this conversation. And so I'm just trying to steward what God's telling me to do. And I'm all for anybody that's at Morgan Stanley or Merrill Lynch or Goldman Sachs, when they pray and say, God, where do you want me? And if they say it's Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs, I hope they stay there, and I hope they're obedient, and I hope they're salt and light to those people. I was just given a different vision.
Yeah.
And I'm just trying to follow what God told me to do. I've just figured that out. I've done it the wrong way. I used to make plans and ask God to bless them. Now I'm just into him telling me what to do and trying to be as obedient as possible. It tends to go a lot better that way, you know.
Well, there's some tension here because, Paul talks about remaining in the condition in which you were called. And, and so for some that might mean stay at that company, don't leave that company.
That's right.
Sort of working internally in a big organization like that. But it seems like, though, for a lot of us, you may be working in a place like that, but really the condition, to use Paul's language, obviously not, I don't think he spoke English as far as I know.
Yeah.
But if you were an entrepreneur at heart and God is giving, really, I mean, my sense in talking to you, Jeff, is that you were always doing this kind of stuff, that it wasn't like you were doing entrepreneurship there, right? From a Kingdom perspective at Morgan Stanley and other places. An entrepreneur really just looking for a place to happen. And so would you say that if maybe you're in a place like where you found yourself, but God has been stirring something like this in your heart to leave that, maybe the safety and the golden handcuffs and all of that, to go and do what really it's your condition. It's what he's been calling you to do all along.
Exactly. I mean, you were talking about the book earlier, and when I think about trading up and writing the book, and I think about not just financial advisors. I did have financial advisors in mind when I originally wrote it, because they were asking me, how do I build a God-honoring business at this firm, at Morgan Stanley and that kind of thing. And I wanted to help them out. But, as I was writing the book, and as we've gotten reaction to the book, there are a lot of business people who are reading the book and being inspired to just be all in with God, whatever that means for you. And what I think is so cool is we have the God of the universe who wants the best for us, who will absolutely deliver his wisdom about the path, where we should work, with whom we should work, and what industry we should work. He'll deliver the clients you need, the business you need. He gives you the intellect to be an engineer or a wealth advisor or run any kind of company or be in media like you. So it's so simple to me after a while. I really just want the book to be an inspiration to people where they just feel like, hey, I can be all in. And God will absolutely tell me exactly what platform he wants me to be on and do that. So I always think, for me, I always look at my dad going from business to being a pastor. And he he wrote his doctoral thesis on how to run the church more like a business, with some business principles to be more efficient and this sort of thing, more effective. And I always thought, wow, isn't that interesting? Even though I didn't want to be a pastor, I feel like I'm bringing church principles or biblical principles to the business world. So I've always kind of thought that way. And I think he just programmed me that way. And all I'm doing is discovering how he programmed me. I'm just trying to do a better job of listening to him and do exactly what he told me to do. So it's probably easier for you to see the patterns than for me. But I think life's a team sport. We have so much fun with that, with other business people trying to figure out exactly what they're supposed to do with their company or those kind of things. And sometimes it's great to have, a group of people around you that are like-minded, that have the best in mind for you, to think with you through those things. So I would suggest people find people to think through those issues with them. Life's a team sport.
And two of the most common questions I get asked in this field are, how do I serve God in a big company? And then the other is, how do I serve God as an entrepreneur? And this book, Trading Up, Moving from Success to Significance on Wall Street, you're going to get both, because as you've heard, as our listeners have heard in this interview, that's been Jeff's journey. So Trading Up, Moving from Success to Significance on Wall Street is the book. I know people can get that at archetypewealth.com and also on Amazon. And anything else you want to say about the book, or any calls to action you want to leave us with, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the direct link is www.tradingupbook.com is probably the cleanest place easiest place to get the book. And I would just say it was an act of obedience for me to write the book. I felt like God just telling me, "Hey, I've done so many things for you. Write them all down. Give everybody access to it. If they want to talk about it, tell them to give you a call." So you could also get a hold of me on that Archetype Wealth website, info@Archetype Wealth, and would be happy to talk to anybody about this journey. That's just my favorite thing, is just thinking about and living an integrated life, in an aligned life, not just going to church on Sunday and then kind of getting worn down for the week and getting your booster shot on Sunday, which is the way I lived my life for the first 15 years or so of my career. It's so much more fun to just live an integrated life where I just wake up and get on my knees and ask God, really pray my calendar of how he wants me to serve people in all the meetings I have that day. And it's just so much more fun to see all the things he brings to light during the day. Just little ways to minister to people.
Yeah.
So I hope others are inspired to do the same.
All right. Tradingupbook.com and archetypewealth.com. If you're a financial advisor looking to be a part of a company like this with this type of a culture and mission, definitely check that out as well. Jeff, thank you so much for your time. And we appreciate you sharing your wisdom and your example with us. It's truly encouraging and inspiring.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks for having me on, Darren.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if so, we would greatly appreciate it if you would leave us a quick rating and review for the Christianity in Business podcast on iTunes. You can get more information about HBU Center for Christianity in Business at christianityinbusiness.com. Thanks for listening, and remember to keep integrating biblical values into your business.